I have a theory that people who do psychology usually are looking for answers themselves.
There's no one universal answer.
Yeah.
Everybody has their story, and different sets of circumstances will lead you to a different path, no matter the commonalities you have with other people. So recently you've seen the headlines, gambling, there's a gambling issue that is, it's a pandemic. They're calling it a gambling pandemic. And I was looking at it and I was thinking, if psychologists step up to speak, people will not listen. They will not be very quick to listen. Psychologists are like those people. I think we are like plumbers. We are ignored until there's a leak.
Yeah.
More men die by suicide because they attempt suicide with very lethal means compared to women. A diagnosis is not a death sentence. It's okay for you to get a diagnosis and figure it out with your psychologist. For some reason, which I'm sure is out there, men don't tell their things to people. They keep them to themselves. They have not told their boys, they have not told their partners, they have not told their parents, they have not told anyone. But for women, they have told a bunch of people, then they have come to therapy.
Welcome to Manspeqtive Africa, your favorite podcast and your favorite show. My name is Dannish Odongo, aka the son of Kano, and this is the podcast where we bring you all different conversations. And of course, we focus majorly on men, and the hashtag is Manspeqtive Africa. And of course, today I have the privilege to host a lady who I think has fantastic hair. She looks great. Her name is Jennifer Kyalo. Jennifer, you are a counseling psychologist, but welcome to the show and tell our audience your name and generally what you do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Asante.
And thank you for the compliments
Asante.
About my hair.
Yeah.
My name is Jennifer Kyalo. I am a psychologist. I work as a psychologist every single day. I work with adults who are 25 years or older, and I am a writer. I have published 3 books, and I am a researcher.
Alright.
I research the intersection of technology and psychology. That's my main interest when it comes to mental health. How do we relate with technology? How does it impact us? And where do we go from there? That's my main academic and intellectual curiosity, to be honest. But other than that, on a daily basis, I work with individuals who are struggling with mental health issues, depression, anxiety, existential crises. Those are my favorites. People who are trying to figure out where to go with their lives. How do I move forward? Getting unstuck. I actually get a majority of people contact me for that.
Okay.
Especially when they're going through life transitions. So
Okay.
marriage, kids, going to a new country, starting a new job, starting a new career in a different field, whatever type of transition, people will contact me for that because there's a lot of anxiety that comes with transitions.
Okay.
And suicidality is a big part of my work as well. I do suicide education, and I do work with people who are in the suicide prevention field.
Yeah.
So those are some of my interests. I
Okay.
could go on and on,
Okay.
but those are my main interests and the kind of people that I work with.
All right.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for agreeing to come to speak with us. And let's start this conversation. I have a theory that people who do psychology usually are looking for answers themselves. Is that your story?
Yes. In a big way, yes.
Yeah.
In a big way, yes. I have always been very curious about the human condition.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would I spend my time doing any other thing that might not get me closer to the answers about human condition instead of just going and actually studying the field that figures out human condition. So that's how I ended up becoming a psychologist. And I was very excited when I learned that this is a field I could get into. Initially, I was like, should I become a social worker? Should I become a doctor? Should I become any type of other, like a nursing profession or anything? But I was sure that I wanted to be in a helping profession.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up being a psychologist. I wanted answers.
You wanted answers.
Yeah.
What was it about you that you needed answers? It's a very interesting way to, nobody wakes up and says, oh, I just want to spend my time helping people figure out their answers for the rest of my life. And that is what will pay my bills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I wanted answers for myself was I was somewhere in my late 20s.
Okay.
So I got to the place where everybody gets, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? But then I didn't have anybody to give me those answers.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to figure it out because I think it's a strength of mine. I'm very proactive.
Yeah.
And I like figuring things out for myself.
Okay.
I like finding answers for myself about things and then applying them, testing them out, seeing does it work, does it not work, does it work for me. I am also very independent, I think, and I'm very self-sufficient. So the way that I find my answers is very tailored to myself. So when I found these answers for myself, I was like, okay, maybe I can share some of these things with people. But then psychology made sense because you find answers that are affecting a huge number of people. So it's like you're hitting many birds with one stone. It made a lot of sense to be a psychologist other than any other profession.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think for the next session, definitely, I think it'll be interesting to know your own childhood, and because I think we did the university I went to. We did some common units, and
Yeah.
one of the common units we did was psychology. And in that class, people who did psychology were very interesting. They were like distinct group from the rest of the school. There were people who I could describe them as that melancholy. They were felt like they're carrying the heaviest burdens on their shoulders,
Yeah.
and they had like multiple questions they wanted answered. And I don't want to get into that though. But you want to answer that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think there's a personality type for it.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
I think there's a personality type
And
for
also an experience to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Psychologists tend to be deep thinkers. They tend to be. I am a pure INFJ. I am very introverted, despite what you are saying. I am very introverted. Deep thinkers. We like figuring things out for ourselves. We like our own spaces. We like our own time to sit and think about the deep existential questions of life. So that is something that I have seen across many psychologists. There's a level of curiosity and a level of empathy and a desire to understand the human condition at its basic level, at its first principles. There's a deep desire for psychologists to do that, because if you don't understand it like that, then how will you be able to help another person understand it for themselves? Especially because there's no one universal answer.
Yeah.
Everybody has their story, and different sets of circumstances will lead you to a different path, no matter the commonalities you have with other people. So the desire to just go deep, to sit with difficult problems, to sit with big problems, existential problems, that is, I think, a distinct characteristic of what a psychologist should have. I think that's something a good psychologist should have.
Okay.
You can't be too sure about things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a chicken and egg type of question. Which one came first? Is it the psychologist who came first, or the environment and the certain things that they went through that produced the psychologist? Because I also think that this sort of our personality traits, even though they're genetic, but also they're very environmental. You find that certain people who went through certain forms of abuse or endured certain form of adverse childhood experiences tend to have certain types of personalities. Of course, we respond differently based on many things, many factors. But I tend to find many psychologists had very difficult childhoods.
Yeah.
So I usually ask, what came first? Is it the psychologist or the problem that produced the psychologist?
Interesting. That's actually a very interesting question.
Yeah.
I would say that there's the belief, the assumption that psychologists have gone through their own level of problems that has pushed them into the psychology field. But I don't believe it's true for as many people as we think. For many psychologists, it's purely curiosity. The ones that I have met and interacted with, there are those who have their own personal stories, childhood traumas that they want answers to, but it's not as many people as you would think. There are many psychologists who are just purely led by the curiosity of it all, because psychology is just an interesting field. Like, you wake up and you sit down to think about what it means to be human, and that's just your job.
Yeah.
And everything around it, and then you get to apply these things to yourself. You test them out on yourself, and some of them work, some of them don't work, and then you come into the world with a level of wisdom that ordinarily you will not get by just reading books.
Yeah.
So I think there could be some things that push you into becoming a psychologist that are coming from your childhood, but not essentially, not like a big percentage.
Yeah.
But of course, there are those who are purely led by things that came from their childhood, which can be healing. I
Yeah.
mean, if you get the answers, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we don't truly understand the power that psychology holds, especially in actually developing our country. Because I look at education, I think we need to have enough psychologists in education. I look at health, we need to have enough psychologists in health. I look at, whether it's engineering, whether it's the way we design our roads, whether it's literally, I feel like we just need to decide that if you're going to achieve Vision 2030, which is in the next 4 or so years, 5 years, then we're going to look at the human capital that we need. And I know we need engineers, and I know we need all these, very traditional careers. But to literally push our country and make it a healthier country, I think we need to embed social scientists at every level of society, whether they're anthropologists, whether they're psychologists, sociologists, behavioral scientists. All those people need to be embedded, because I don't think we're going to grow this country if we don't understand why 80% of deaths on our road are men between the ages of 20 up to 40. We will not understand, how we design roads without walking lanes. We will not understand why people would not use, the overpass that have been made on these major highways, because they just want to, pass through the road, and they don't really want to use that. We don't understand why our leaders just steal, and they endlessly steal, and we cannot stop them from stealing. Why our systems are deeply broken. These are things that I think, in my opinion, are symptoms that social scientists need to spend time helping us answer as a nation. That's the only way we can unlock the potential of our country.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I could not agree with it anymore. Like you've hit it right on the nail right on the head. And a big part of my argument has always been we, as a nation, we seem to be very comfortable with not engaging psychologists until there's a major tragedy.
Exactly.
And not just a major tragedy, until there's something that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And only psychologists could explain. So recently you've seen the headlines, gambling, there's a gambling issue that is, it's a pandemic. They're calling it a gambling pandemic. And I was looking at it and I was thinking, if psychologists step up to speak, people will not listen. They will not be very quick to listen. Psychologists are like those people. I think we are like plumbers. We are ignored until there's a leak.
Yeah.
And then now your sink is not draining water,
Yeah.
and your kitchen is flooded.
Yeah.
And then you're like, hey, when you need plumbers, I need to find a plumber. Somebody give me a number. And now you'll call everybody you know to find a psychologist and social scientists in general.
Yeah.
There's a tendency to disregard and ignore the work that we do. And that is not something that started yesterday. It's something that has always been there. And you can see it when these tragedies, that's when you realize, we need psychologists. You see people talking about it on Twitter. X, I refuse to call it X, on Twitter. So you'll see people asking, where are the psychologists? They're always quiet. They're never talking. But then you're like, bro, we talk, but people don't listen. So there's a disconnect in how psychology is treated in this country and in this continent. We are still seen as the lesser profession. Doctors are superior. Psychiatrists are superior. People will be like, I'd rather deal with my problems in other ways like what, drinking, hanging out with people, buying all the self-help books you can find. But the answers, because your story is very personal, you're not going to find those answers in a book. It's okay for you to read, but your story is very personal. And you need personalized care. And that's the thing about psychology. And there are parts of psychology that cannot be measured in a way that science would want them measured. So because it's difficult to quantify psychology like that, people tend to disregard it. People tend to think it doesn't work because it's not quantifiable. And we've seen a rise in research, psychology research, that prioritizes quantifiable psychological approaches over others that work but are not quantifiable. So, for example, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is considered the gold standard of mental health care. It's because there's a set number of sessions that you go to. There's a manual that you follow when you're doing cognitive behavioral therapy. There are books you can read and follow specific techniques to treat specific issues. And you're done in whatever number of sessions. And if you can measure it like that, and you can go like, yeah, I went to these sessions and I got better, blah, blah, blah. You can kind of quantify them like that because you followed the manual. It was like this, like this, like this. But then when you go to therapists such as myself, of course I do practice some elements of CBT, but most of my work is very exploratory. Most of my work is psychodynamic. I am the people who will sit and talk about things that are not on a manual. I will ask you questions that are not manualized. And there's no way to quantify that, because if I ask you a specific question that is specific to Dannish, I'm not going to use the same question on somebody else because their story is very different and there's no way to quantify that. And you both get healed in a way. You both get psychological support, but it's specific to you. And there's no way to quantify it because you can't put it on a chart. So things like that, because it's not quantifiable scientifically in some aspects, we try to get the quantifiable ones, but the quantifiable ones don't always work. And so it's very easy to dismiss. It's very easy to dismiss psychology and be like, it doesn't work or it's not that important because you can put it on a chart.
I agree with you and I see your point. I just have a slightly different opinion, which is in addition to what you're saying. First, I think that the mental health care needs to be a bit more standardized and need to have a bit more evidence. Like, for example, you walk into a psychiatrist office and for them to diagnose you with ADHD, they will have you fill up a set of questions on DSM, and this DSM then you're taken into a psychologist who can do some sort of cognitive tests, and then we will diagnose you maybe in a day or so that you have ADHD, which is a very complex, neurodevelopment condition, that should take a bit more than that. Like, for example, can we draw blood? Can we sit with a few of your relatives, how you've lived with them? Are we able to do a brain scan? What sort of other technologies can we use to provide a bit more accurate evidence? But even not just that, because when we spend a bit more time understanding the nature of your brain, then our treatment then becomes very specialized. So I don't just give you retinol. I don't just give you this specific, stimulant medication or stimulant medication. I give you a medication that will deal with the specific issue that you're dealing with. And I think even psychology needs to go that direction. So one. Number two, I also think that psychologists are victims of their own circumstances because they are formed a certain conclave of their own. First of all, there's a lot of war in there. There's not an organized association. So even if we were to say that we want to engage with a psychologist, who are we going to engage? Is it that the clinical psychology association or the counseling psychology association or the positive psychology association of Kenya? You have all these psychology associations, and when you're divided, it's very difficult to do joint advocacy. When people come together, when I'm a journalist, we have only Media Council of Kenya and we have the Kenya Union of Journalists, and we have, even though we have all these small associations, but the umbrella body is one.
I understand what you mean.
Psychologists, psychiatrists, the same. All these things, but the umbrella body is one. But psychologists are, and then when I also don't think that you guys engage the media quite a bit. Like, for example, only you write and a few more psychologists, like Dr. Njenga is a psychiatrist, wrote for a very long time. There's a certain doctor from the University of Nairobi who was more or less like, I don't know whether he was a sociologist, he passed on a while back. I think he was called Dr. Uko. But I think we need to see more psychologists writing on contemporary issues day to day, so that we are not only waiting for you when there are 147 deaths in Garissa, or there's a terror attack happening at, in a mall in Nairobi, and then like, psychologist, so we come to you guys when that, anyway, that's said and done.
Could I respond? Because there's things in there that I would like to demystify and clarify right now. For the record. Number one, I like that you brought in the DSM. The DSM is the Bible, and there's a lot of pushback on the DSM, even sometimes from the people who are the
So for our audience, they don't know what a DSM is.
Yes. So right now we have a book that is called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. We are on the 5th edition, the text revised. So it's DSM 5TR. And that's like, I would call it the Bible of mental health, because it has all the diagnoses, all the mental health illnesses, all the mental illnesses that you could think of are in the DSM. They have categories from personality disorders to elimination disorders, mood disorders, all these things. They are in there. They have categories where you can see the symptoms of each and diagnose. A clinician can diagnose you with using the DSM. And as I was saying, there's a lot of pushback on it from some quarters, because it is very much rooted in the medical model. Because if you have specific symptoms, then it's very easy to diagnose you with this thing and then give you medication using this thing. So because it's very much connected to medication, there's pushback about it. And because even the medication, there is pushback about it. They're like, some of it does not work. You need to test this and test this before you can find the combination that works for you. So there's a lot of pushback in that sense. But still, I'm a big believer and advocate for the DSM. I think without it, we would be walking blindly. So I love the DSM. I have my questions and issues with it, but for majority of the time, I like it because it gives a lot of clarity on a lot of things, and it can be a jump of points to find out more about you and the issues that you have. As you said, with ADHD, you want to have a diagnosis, yes. It can give you a few answers, but then now you need to explore a lot with your psychologist and figure out where do you go from there now that you have a diagnosis. A diagnosis is not a dead sentence. It's okay for you to get a diagnosis and figure it out with your psychologist. Second part is what you mentioned about the divisions among psychologists, and I'm happy to report that we are no longer that divided. So right now, we have the Counselors and Psychologist Board. It was created. It is a government body. It is where all psychologists are registered and then they are licensed. So right now, is it a few days ago? Actually, I think I posted this on my LinkedIn. A few days ago, the Counselors and Psychologist Board released a list of all registered psychologists in Kenya. So right now, when you need to engage psychologists, you do not need to go to all the divided bodies. You just need to go to the Counselors and Psychologist Board.
Hallelujah.
There is a whole gazetted thing. It's
that.
out there. Like there's a list of everyone, from people with PhDs to people with masters to people with bachelor's degrees to people with diplomas, and they all are there listed with their registration numbers. So once they are registered, that is one off, and then you get an annual license. So your annual license is from January to December. And every year you renew your license, depending on the level of education you're on. So you might find that some people are master students right now, and in future, maybe a year from now, they'll graduate, they'll become they get into a doctoral program. Or there are people who are right now who are graduating from their doctoral programs. So now they will be, if that list is renewed, they're going to be moved up to the doctoral level. So it fluctuates like that, but now we have a list.
Okay.
So don't go anywhere.
I like that.
Yes.
All right. So let's come back to the crux of the matter, the reason why I invited you. How many men walk into your office to seek help? And what state are they in when they're walking in, for those who walk in?
I would say that I think I would weigh that into a percentage. I would say about maybe 30% men, 70% women.
Okay.
Yes, and the state varies depending on the issues that they are presenting. So people come to therapy for a bunch of reasons. As I said, some people will come to me because they're stuck. They'll be like, I've gotten this job and I don't like it, and I am feeling...
We're talking about men.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so they'll be like, I am coming to therapy because I don't know why I am not happy about the job that I have, or I don't know why I'm struggling with my relationships. I don't know why I have been feeling sad and I can't explain it. I have done everything. I have hung out with my family members. It's not helping. So what is wrong with me? It could be a number of things. It could be I've been drinking too much lately, and my partner said I should seek some help.
My partner said I should seek help.
Yeah,
That's a very interesting choice of words.
My partner said I should get some help because they don't understand why I'm drinking so much and everything seems okay.
Okay.
It could be a number of reasons, honestly, and they vary, and that's the diversity of therapy.
Okay. If you compare the 30% of men who come to get therapy and the 7% of women who come to get therapy, what is the state of the women who come to get therapy? Or what would you, are there comparisons you could draw? Are there comparisons? Are there differences which you can say, okay, I've noticed this pattern because of course some say it's small and we don't want to use that and extrapolate and say, oh, that's the state of psychology, and I'm just talking about your experience. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think the one that stands out a majority of the time is that for the men, they have probably not spoken about their issue with anyone. But for the women, they'd be like, they'd be like, let me tell you something that I have not told people. And you'd be like, okay, tell me. They tell you the thing. And you're like, okay, have you really not told anyone? They're like, okay, I told my mom and I told my sister and I told my best friend. And at work, there's this colleague that I also told. So they've told a bunch of people. They just don't consider them like people, because they're like, maybe a professional is the people.
Yeah.
But for men, they're like, let me tell you this thing that I've not told anyone. And then they tell you a thing and you're like, you've really not told anyone? And they're like, yeah, I've never told any single living soul in my entire life. You're the first person to hear this with your ears. It has been residing in my mind. So that is the number one biggest difference between those two groups of people. For some reason, which I'm sure is out there, men don't tell their things to people. They keep them to themselves. They have not told their boys, they have not told their partners, they have not told their parents, they have not told anyone. But for women, they've told a bunch of people, then they've come to therapy. So you're among the people, only that now you're a professional. That's the number one difference.
That's the number one difference. Is there any other difference that you've noticed?
I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are. I'm just blanking on them right now.
Okay.
That's the one that stands
But
out.
I can also imagine that you hear a lot more that our partner said we come, as compared to women saying our partner said we come for therapy.
That is true. That's actually quite true.
Yeah.
I get a lot of people who mentioned that for them it was mentioned, therapy was mentioned to them by a friend or a colleague or a partner.
Those are women.
Those are men.
Those are men. Okay.
Yeah, they're not ordinarily coming to therapy because they were like, I am going through this thing. Let me look for a psychologist.
Yeah.
They're not ordinarily doing that.
Yeah.
But then I've gotten a lot of women who are like, yeah, I was on TikTok, I was looking for a therapist, and then you came up.
I was on TikTok looking for a therapist.
Oh, I get lots of TikTok. But the TikTok is that, guys, get on TikTok. Don't
Really?
get on TikTok. There's a
Wow.
lot of people on TikTok. I get so many questions from TikTok. I get people calling me, hi, I got your number from TikTok. DMs, I get so many DMs. I get so many emails. I got your number on TikTok. I saw your face on TikTok. Your video on TikTok was sent to me by so-and-so, and I was looking for a therapist. I was on TikTok looking for a therapist specifically. So I get a lot of that from ladies. From the gents, it's mostly I was referred to you by a friend. I was referred to you by a colleague. I was referred to you by my partner. They'd be like, yeah, I was referred to you by who? My sister. I was referred to you by my wife, by my mom, somebody.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go back to this difference about men not sharing a lot of things. We understand that there are very interesting facts around just men and mental health. And I know people call it there's always like a dilemma around talking about these numbers. First of all, I don't know, what are the statistics around men and mental health, and whether it's suicide, whether it's depression, are there like statistics that you can, give us on off your head?
Yeah, I think the major one that has been cutting across of late is that men attempt suicide more than women.
Okay.
And sorry, men
women
die,
attempt suicide.
yes,
Yeah.
women attempt suicide more than men, but men die by suicide more than women. More men die by suicide more than women, and a ratio of 1 to 4. That is the one that has been thrown out there on the internet frequently.
Okay.
And when it comes to Kenya, we don't have a lot of data because I think this is something has been mentioned before. There's a lot of agencies that are collecting this data, or not even collecting this data. It goes under the radar, and there's a lot of hiding about the cause of death when it is suicide. So people will make up any other story other than say this person died by suicide. So because there's underreporting and also the misreporting, and too many people who have access to this information. When people die, sometimes they'll die by suicide at the hospital, or they die by suicide at the police station, or they died at home. So
Or they drowned.
yeah. So these places that they're taken to, they're too scattered. We don't have like a central place where death by suicide is being recorded. And because of also now the underreporting and the hiding of the cause of death, that can lead to not knowing the exact number of people who are dying by suicide. So right now I am aware that there is there's an ongoing conversation, and I think even some action that is moving in that direction to have a centralized reporting of suicide. So there are people in the mental health space and the suicide prevention space who are trying to bring a repository together where death by suicide is going to be reported in this one place. So people will go and collect this data from places and bring it to a central place. Then we can have numbers. But men do die more by suicide than women. That's for sure.
But even with the bad numbers in Kenya, so I was part of the team that developed Kenya's suicide prevention policy. Strategy rather. And of course the strategy ends in 2026, that's next year, and the aim was to reduce deaths by suicide by 10%.
10%.
And so even with the numbers that we know, at least 70% of the reported deaths, even though they're bad statistics, are still men, know. And also, and of course, we know that there's a lot of work around, implementing the Coroner's Act. There's a lot of work around having a national surveillance that then brings all these things. And since we're in that space together, we understand, but we don't fully, I feel like we have very pedestrian, reasoning when it comes to analyzing why men die by suicide. People often say that, oh, it's socialization. And I find it deeply problematic. What do you think about that?
When you say pedestrian, what are some examples that you have of the pedestrianness?
It's like, oh, men are socialized to keep quiet. Men are socialized to do this. Men are socialized to do this. But men come in different shape, form, size, cultural backgrounds. So men are not one size fits all. I feel like we want to, when we're treating women, we're treating them like individuals. Like, for example, we have young women, adolescent girls, and we have, married women, and we have divorced, and we have widowed, and we have older women, and we have categories. And we really are very gentle and specific about addressing their issues. But when it comes to men, it's like sort of like a one size fits all. Yet I can tell you for free that a young man at the shores of Lake Victoria might have similarities with a young man somewhere in Kinondo in Digowal, Kilifi County, Kwale County. And they're both men, but there might be differences.
Yeah.
Those differences will have a bearing on the outcomes of their lives.
Yeah.
But because they are both men, we want to judge them on the same, that's one of the pedestrian ways I think we deal with them. And that's why we don't get it right when it comes to male issues.
Yeah. Okay. I understand that sentiment. And what I would say is that as much as that is happening, I have also seen efforts to try to break it apart.
Yeah.
So rarely are these efforts spoken about because it's easier to generalize, right?
Yeah.
People like generalizing.
Yeah.
It's a thing that our minds love to do. So it's important. I think what I practice is that I look for the things that are not generalized, and I try to dig deep into finding who is doing something that is not a generalization. So as you've mentioned, or the women have been categorized. There's this gender, there's this age group, and this age group, and this locality, and all these things, which are very positive efforts. And I think a lot of that needs to be done when it comes to men as well. And the efforts that I have seen are efforts like there's an organization. It's not a Kenyan organization, unfortunately. There's an organization that specifically does research on men, mental health research on men. It's I don't know if you've heard about it. It's called Movember.
Movember?
Yes.
Okay, there's another one called the Center for Boys and
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
it's in the
You see
US,
things
yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
Those are things that give me hope, because I'm like, if it has been done out there, then it can be done in Kenya,
Yeah.
and we just need more people to take it up, because there are many problems in the world, very many important problems in the world, but one person cannot care about all of them all at once. So you will find that at some point you will have to stop caring about some very important things and live with the discomfort of not caring about those things, not because you're a bad person, but because there's another important thing that you also need to care about, and is very close to your heart, and it also requires your time and attention.
Yeah.
So we need people, in my opinion, we need people to care about different things. Let's all stop caring about the same thing.
Okay.
We need diversity of care.
I like that diversity of
We
care.
need people to care about different things so that
yeah.
we can address all these important things that are there. Men are struggling, women are struggling. This is not a gender war. It is the reality. People are struggling. So if people are struggling, we can't all care about just one gender, and we can't all care about just one issue. Right now, ADHD, autism, being on the spectrum is fancy and out there. It's the in thing. We can't all care about it. Not because it doesn't matter, but because there are also other equally important things that need to be cared about. Let's care about depression. Let's care about PCOS. Let's care about PTSD. Let's care about dementia. Let's care about all these other number of things. Let's have people caring about other things so that we can, the tide can raise all the boats.
Yeah.
Right now, I feel like we have just the tide raising one boat, because people are very focused on a very narrow number of things.
Yeah.
That's how I would look at it. So I don't have a specific answer for the monolith that is men being categorized as one thing, but I know that there are efforts, and those efforts need to be amplified.
Yeah.
And also, in my opinion, I think men themselves need to take it up as well. So if you're a man, you need and you're seeing this gap, please take it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that because women issues has become a national issue, but for many issues we're always told that it's you men ought to organize it, you men ought to organize, you know, and I think that's the danger that we do. That I think human rights are human rights,
Yes,
and human needs should be human needs.
True.
I think we also should begin to think about our country as a holistic country. The first part of this conversation was sort of like just exploratory, and it's important that we lay the foundation so that we understand the broader issues and how one string can affect a larger, stuff, So tell me more about why, in your theory or in your experience or in your understanding, because you're a psychologist and of course you are a doctoral student or what?
Yes.
Doctoral student.
I am a doctoral student in clinical psychology.
Yeah, in clinical psychology.
Yeah.
What do they say? Why do men die by suicide a lot more than women?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the theory that is out there right now from all the research that I have done, which is suicide, is a topic that I have really gone in depth, to be honest. It's a topic that is very close to my heart. The theory that is out there is that more men die by suicide because they attempt suicide with very lethal means compared to women, which is understandable. It's a plausible theory, and it has been seen that men will definitely try with more lethal means. But beyond that, I think also another part of the reason why more men die by suicide is because their suffering goes unnoticed a lot more.
Yeah.
So for men, for women, you remember that thing I said about women will come to therapy and they're like, yeah, I've told so and so, and I've told so and so, and I've told so and so about this struggle that I'm having, and then finally I've gotten to you, Miss
Yeah.
Therapist.
Yeah.
For men, that you're the first person they're speaking to,
Mm.
and because you're the first person they're speaking to, there's an expectation that their problems will be solved very soon, and you will be able to solve them because they've trusted you with this major thing, which they have not told anybody else. So there's a level of urgency in solving the problem now, and they have not had time to sit with their problems. They have probably not had time to think through whatever they're going to do, because the urgency is just, I've found a therapist, let me work with them, let them solve my problem right now. And because this therapy, of course, does not necessarily solve all your problems in one sitting,
Yeah.
the time between when you access a therapist, because I think I read something somewhere, please don't quote this, but I read something somewhere that a majority of the men who have died by suicide usually have sought mental health support within the previous year. Like 1 year before their death, they have sought mental health support. That is something that I read somewhere. And
That could be a Western statistics,
Of course,
which of course dominates a lot of our mental health
Of course.
narratives in Africa.
Yeah. And also because even the training that we get is majorly Western. As a psychologist, I'm reading Freud, I'm reading Carl Jung, and those guys do not even know. I don't know if they ever stepped foot in Africa, right? So there's a lot of tweaking Western education to fit an African context and a Kenyan context. So that's one thing. So they have sought help, and sometimes maybe some things have been missed in the process of that seeking help. Some things might have been missed, because remember, when it comes to mental health care and mental health research, there's a part of it that has been mostly been tested on women, because women seek more help.
Yeah.
So when you find the statistics that say X, Y, and Z, we need to factor in the fact that many women will seek help. More women will seek help than men. So if more women are seeking help more than men, then the statistics will be a little bit more skewed towards helping women than they are to helping men. Because the number was very small, and the issues were very maybe not as varied as the issues that women bring to therapy. So I think because of those missing links, in the gaps in the research, the gaps in the healthcare support that men get, it could be that could be a reason why they die more, because their suffering looks different, and it requires a lot more effort to understand their suffering because you're working with limited data.
That's quite profound. Tell me more about that.
That,
like practically how that show up. Like, for example,
yeah.
yeah.
So remember we did the 70-30 statistic I
Yes.
just mentioned.
Yeah.
So think about it. If 70% of women are coming to therapy in my office, I am getting 70% data
Okay.
from a group of people that is still being researched more on, and people who have historically sought help. So I have a lot more information about how to support a woman in therapy, because therapy care has been tested a lot more on women. So if I have 30% for men, then and historically, let's say historically, 30% of men have gone to therapy.
Yeah.
I'm working with less data, and I'm working with less variance when it comes to the number of issues that are brought in. So maybe the 30% of men will bring in, let's say, alcohol, depression, and let's say anxiety, and women will come in with alcohol, depression, anxiety, relationship issues, stress, whatever.
Reproductive health and all these things.
I have a lot of things to think about on this category, because I have more people. So I am collecting much more data.
Okay.
And that can influence the way that I approach therapy. So I think also there's just as a psychologist, it's a challenge that I have to think about every single time that I am working in therapy. And even the books that I read, the people that I listen to, there's a lot of more books written about mental health for women. Wellness is mostly marketed to women. Self-help is mostly marketed to women, and that's why the rise of the Andrews, Tate, and Kibe and Amerix, those things are rising up a lot more, because those voices have not yet been heard. But then they're coming up with a lot of nonsense that does not really help men. When you start telling men education is not important and you just go and hustle and get a job, but women are going to school. A majority of women in graduate programs, majority of people in graduate programs are women in masters and PhD level. In my class, I go to a class that has purely women. You're going to get 10 clinical psychologists in 4 years. I
Yeah.
promise you.
Yeah.
They're going to graduate from my class.
Yeah.
Where are the men? So you see, there's a lot of things that are colliding. It's not one answer.
Yeah.
And also, if men are not encouraged to seek this help because they're not finding other men, they're not finding the men psychologists in the profession. So there's a perception that is created that this thing is for women. Funny, where are the men? Why are the men not practicing? Why are men not coming to become psychologists? So I know there are male psychologists. I am currently in therapy with a male psychologist. And I have friends who are men. But I can tell you, when I was in undergraduate, my class had, I think, 5 or 6 men in a class that had almost 25 people. When I was in a master's program, I think there was 3 men in a class that had about 15. And now I am in a doctoral program that has no men.
Because they're saying that psychology is easy, and it still goes into that gender
Exactly.
stereotype, which
There's
is
a lot of
which is
gender
which is
stereotype.
garbage in my opinion.
Yeah.
The man needs to do engineering and hard degrees. That's why
Yes.
in engineering class there's like 15 men and maybe 1 woman.
Yes.
And mathematics and all these things. So they'll tell you that men are many there,
Yeah.
while men are few here.
And think about it.
Yeah.
Think about this is just a thought. Think about why there's that feminization of mental health. That is something that we need to think about a lot, because why is mental health and psychology seen as a feminine profession? And we know historically things that are seen as feminine are seen as less. And if they're seen as less, they are compensated less. We earn less money than most we earn less money than most healthcare providers. I don't earn the same as a doctor, and I will probably never earn as much as a doctor if we go to for the same job. Because I'm not saying I'm a doctor. I've not spent 6 years in undergraduate, but I am also I'm going to spend about 10 years in school studying to become an actual psychologist. I should be compensated for my job, but because it's seen as a feminine job, then there's an expectation that it's lesser. It's not that important. And then you remember, women are considered carers. If women are considered carers and nurturers, then there's the expectation that when you come to therapy, there's a lot of caring and a lot of nurturing. But men are not carers, men are not nurturers. So it's not a male profession. So why would men go to a very feminine thing like that? New mama kuenda therapy.
Oh my goodness.
This is layered in so many ways. That's why
I've never seen it like that. That's deeply profound.
Yes.
And it begins by, I like what you've said, the feminization of therapy, because I have had discussions with many men. I've done a lot of mental health conversations, and men are always saying that the current model of psychology is deeply feminine, and it will not work for men. But the man who's saying that has not gone for therapy.
Yeah.
They don't know exactly, but they've heard or they've seen it on a movie where you're lying on a certain couch and somebody listens to you, and then you're crying, and then they're passing you serviettes. But they've not done therapy. They don't know what goes on in therapy there.
Yeah.
And the challenges they have could actually be solved by therapy.
Interesting enough,
Yeah.
there's also the now that you've mentioned it about somebody lying on the couch, that is just one perspective. There are so many psychological approaches that the one for lying on the couch is just one, and it's the only one that we are shown. But then there are so many other psychological approaches, and it may not work for you to lie on a couch. You might go to therapy, and you are allowed to go and pick a therapist who does not practice the way that you don't feel aligns with you. You can ask for different things. Therapy is your time. You can go there and be like, me, I want strategy. I want problem solving. Let's sit and do that. And it's there. So therapy is not one model.
It's not one size fits all.
No, there are
All right.
different types of approaches.
Yeah.
And that's why, as a therapist, myself, when I go to school, I am taught different approaches. When you go to school, we are not taught one approach. We are taught many approaches. And then as a therapist, I need to figure out which one most aligns with the way that I like to work, or which one most aligns with, works best for the kinds of problems that I'm going to be addressing. Because when you come to therapy with anxiety, lying on the couch might be nice and fun, but I still need to do like a level of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to help you deal with the anxiety. So as much as I am a psychodynamic therapy, somebody who is more exploratory, figuring out your childhood, figuring out how you exist in the world, your interpersonal relationships, your unconscious and the biases that exist there, and the way they influence your current life, your existential issues, and how they impact the way that you think about yourself and the way you exist in the world. Those are things that I explore. But I need to explore CBT because you have anxiety.
Yeah.
And I need to give you tools for CBT.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to this very interesting thing. You say that the symptoms in men might be different from what you have been trained to pick up, like what's in the DSM, you know?
Yeah.
So give me an example of how maybe suicidality or depression or anxiety in a man might be different from a woman, and so a psychologist might miss it if they don't understand the nuance and the differences.
Yeah. So when you look at the DSM, when it comes to, let's say, for example, depression,
Yeah.
depression ordinarily will be about you're feeling a depressed mood, you have lost interest in activities, you are having bad sleep or sleeping too much, different changes in diet, either you're eating too much or too little. It could be a number of things. But then when it comes to men, some of the specific things that are seen in men when it comes to depression is, like, for example, men become more impulsive and they become more reckless, and they abuse drugs more than they ordinarily do. So if you are a person who drinks one beer, you suddenly are the guy who's at the club drinking 3 beers and 5 shots, and guys are like,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Yeah.
Guys are like, hey, kwani, hey, you're drinking, and you're like, I'm just lit, I'm having a good time. But really, it's it could be a sign of depression. Again, the other thing I think I need to caveat everything that I'm saying is that these things are very unique and specified.
They're
to
very
you.
personal.
Yes, they're very
These are just general.
general.
Yeah.
So the impulsivity is a very big one. Women tend to be less impulsive than men when it comes to, like, for example, depression. Women will be, you see, where they say the depression, oh, you're sad and you're crying.
You draw your curtains
You
and
draw your
stuff like
curtains. That is a more, in my opinion, a very more feminine way of being. We want to rot in bed. Not that men don't rot in bed. Sometimes they will rot in bed, but for men, they will probably be more impulsive, more reactive, engage in very risky behavior, and abuse drugs more than they ordinarily do if they do ordinarily take drugs. They become very detached. They become very detached, and they don't engage emotionally. So you'll try to have a very deep conversation with them, but they are not there. They don't want to have a difficult conversation with you. But one thing, and of course, the talk of suicide. I intend to kill myself for something, and just putting their houses in order. That is very, very present when it comes to depression. So, and suicide. So yeah, those are like the main differences you see in men. And as a therapist, if I'm not keen about that, a man might present. A man may present in therapy and be like, yeah, I'm feeling depressed and blah blah blah. But then when you look at the list of the symptoms on DSM, maybe they are getting maybe 2 or 3 of them, including the depressed mood, loss of interest in things, and, let's say, suicidality. So let's say they have those 3. So you see, with the DSM, they don't have enough symptoms to be described as depressed. But in reality, they have other things that are not on the DSM.
Yeah.
So it's very important to pick out those small, explore them. As a therapist, if you're listening and you're a therapist, I encourage you to explore further. Don't just go. That's why I said the DSM is just a guide. It's like the constitution. It's not prescribing. It's not saying do this or do this or do this. It's just giving you like a framework to work from. But it's more of a guideline. So as a therapist, I have a lot more work to do in therapy with a client, whether male or female. Even for women, I have a lot more work to do and explore your specific experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I've done a lot of mental health work, by the way, for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
But I've never had some of these things, because maybe perhaps I'm also surrounded by male psychologists a lot, because those are the people who deal with. My doctor is male, my psychologist is male, most of my friends are male, and when I meet with ladies, we talk about, maybe they are drawing from the empathy I carry, and not really about this type of thing that, this is why we miss. And so if I can summarize what you're saying, and it's not to summarize it because you said what is profound, but I can say that men who eventually die by suicide, there are certain guardrails that they miss along the way. So maybe it begins, maybe the community they belong.
Yeah.
And I wanted to explore this, that I sort of feel like male friendships also fail men. That we can play pool for like many, many years, but you don't know where I live, you don't know that I'm in debt, you don't know that I have a gambling addiction. We've had meet with some of my friends regularly for the last over 10 years. It was only in the last meet that I pulled some 3 men aside and we started talking about marriage.
Yeah.
But we've had meet and we talk about very intellectual things, meteors and world economy and politics and the country and why must go and all these things, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But we have never talked about, these things. And within this circle, people are hurting.
Yeah.
Their marriages are falling apart. People are battling addiction. People are dealing with all sorts of problems that I think, genuine friendship can help.
Yeah.
Because this month really the theme is community. As a psychologist, what do you make of that, and what's your understanding of that? Yeah.
Um, I as I mentioned in the beginning, or somewhere before the recording of this conversation, I am a big fan of community. I love community, and I think there's something that is usually said in the mental health field that we heal in community,
Yeah.
and it is often overlooked because when it comes to community, it's a very African and Eastern way of being. We love community, but then the West loves individualism, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying that that's what it is. And when you look at mental health care, the way it's set up, if we are borrowing a lot from the West, then the West is gonna encourage a lot of individualism.
Yeah.
So I encourage people in our context to not let go of community because we heal in community, and we have historically healed in community. And when people are struggling, the tendency is to withdraw. The tendency is to shut down and be alone. And I encourage people not to do that. I know it feels comfortable, but don't. I encourage you to reach out. That's the time that you reach out the most. The time that you're going through the hardest thing, the feeling in your heart, it's telling you, shut down, be alone, just go and chill and decompress.
Yeah.
I am asking you to go against your feelings and to go against your impulses and to go against your gut instinct and reach out. That is when you need it the most.
Yeah.
So it's very important for people to do that.
But the question I'm asking, because we have we're almost done here, and I don't want this question to maybe slide. What do you think? Why do you think? What are the fundamental differences between male communities and female communities? You don't belong in male communities. I can tell you what we do. I've just told you what we do.
Yeah.
But what do women do that perhaps we could borrow from us men? Because I also think that, honestly, if we are dying by the numbers we are dying, the incarceration rate is extremely high. The homelessness rate is extremely high. We are dealing with all sorts of addictions, whether it's drugs and substance abuse, whether it's gambling, whether it's pornography. All the social problems are carried. I mean, a huge part of it, they're carried by men.
Yeah.
And of course, if you look at many of these deaths that eventually we report, even homicide rates in this country, I know we have a femicide issue in this country, but we have a male homicide problem in this country, because out of the 10 bodies that are picked by the police, 9 are men.
Yeah.
If you look at extrajudicial executions, all the bullet-riddled bodies, they are men. If you go to prisons in Nairobi, almost 90% of, we're talking about almost 80% of the prison population are men.
I understand what
And
you're
a
saying.
majority of them are in remand. Anyway, so my point is this, that what can we learn from female communities that can help us to deal with some of the social issues that we've normalized in the male spaces?
Two things.
Yeah.
Number one is vulnerability.
Okay.
And number two is let go of the performance.
Okay.
So when it comes to vulnerability, women are very vulnerable with their fellow women. Yes, I know that sometimes you'll not find your girls, you're not finding the right group of people, but women show up for women and they're vulnerable in that showing up. So women will show up to when your baby is born. Your women will come to your house. They will cook for you. They will bring you food. They will cook for you. They will help you clean up. They will nurse you. They will chemsha soup for you. They will do the things that you need in the time that you're in. When umefiwa, it's the women who will come with the thermoses from their houses. They will bring the big sufurias. They will make sure that there's food. They will do things. They will come together. The chamas will come together. The women are always in some chama, even if it's a merry-go-round. For some reason, we always find a way to find community. And it's a thing that we love because we know how it comes through when things get tough. But for men, I think it's an avoidance tactic. And it's not an avoidance tactic because you're bad people, but it's because you've been taught to perform. So there's this thing I would encourage you to go and look at. A couple of years ago, I think I read it. It's called the precarious manhood. So precarious manhood states that men need to constantly perform their masculinity and their manhood because it is precarious. It is always being tested. So as a man, you need to be proving your masculinity with every interaction that you engage in. So yes. So for example, I
let me just add this a statement. They say women are, men become. Go on. Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah.
So for men, if I can, as a woman, I can come and tell you, hey, you're looking nice. I can go and tell the ladies that are out here. I can meet my friend on the street and be like, oh, hi, you're looking really nice. I love your outfit, whatever. As a man, telling your fellow man, hey, you look nice. Hey, I love your hair. I love that haircut. Hey, you'll be like, hey, but I'm not a homosexual. No homo. Because the moment that you don't perform that masculinity, you're automatically put in a place that is not desirable, which is being a homosexual.
Yeah. Oh
And
my
that is
goodness.
just one example. Men are constantly performing their masculinity because if they don't perform it, it's going to be questioned. And if it is questioned, then they might be demoted to femininity. Femininity is bad. Femininity is weak. Femininity is not desirable. That's why being told ukona umama is used as an insult, not compliment. So these things,
Or the P insult. It's usually
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. It's all because femininity is the desirable of if only it is serving sexuality, and other than that, it is bana. You can't be a umama. That is not as a man. You need to perform your masculinity. So it's like for men, a majority of the interactions are how can I perform my masculinity and show that I am a man. I am man enough. How can I, if I am aggressive, then maybe I am man enough. If I do not show my weaknesses, if I do not show my pain, if I am stoic, if I hide my emotions and only show the approved ones, anger and frustration, then I am a man. Male joy is not celebrated like that.
Oh my goodness.
And so men grow up to become very emotionally stunted. And they start this from their childhood. They grow up to be very emotionally stunted. And that emotional stuntedness grows into their lives as adults and into the relationships they get into and into the roles that they get into, the jobs that they do. It permeates in everything. And we would like to pretend that it doesn't, but it does. Because there's this, as I said, precarious manhood. Your manhood is always on the line. You need to
And
be
it can be
constantly
taken.
playing it.
It can be demoted.
It can be demoted, and not only can it be demoted, it can be demoted to something that is not appealing, which is femininity. That's why gay men are demoted. Light-skinned men are demoted.
By the way, we call men. I saw a certain meme. There's a guy called George Minlo. I don't know whether it's a man or a woman, but I can tell it's a man. He said that the type of problems I go through, if I was a light skinned man, I'd have cried.
Yeah, exactly. So light-skinned men are demoted, gay men are demoted, bisexual men are demoted.
Because their masculinity is not.
They're not performing masculinity.
They're not performing masculinity.
And there's only one form of masculinity,
Okay.
which is exists in the man box. Look up the man box. It exists in the man box.
Okay.
So the man box supports the precarious masculinity.
What's the man box?
Oh, the man box is this set of rules and beliefs and ideas and identities that men are required to believe in and to exist in, and they are in a particular box. So if you don't do the things that are in the box, you are falling out of the box, and that is wrong. That is bad. That is not. You're not being man enough if you're not in the man box. So this man box is created by fellow men most of the time and upheld by fellow men most of the time. And then women are kind of become complicit because they start now getting into the beliefs that men are supposed to be this, men are supposed to be this other thing. And if my man is not this thing, then he's not man enough. And then they come at your neck, oh, you're not man enough because you're not doing X, Y, and Z. So the man box exists to uphold the precarious manhood. If your manhood is always on the line, then you need a set of rules to help you stay man enough. And those rules exist inside the man box. So those are things that you think about. And that's why I said two things, vulnerability and now the precarious manhood. If you're not allowed to be vulnerable, then you're not going to form intimate relationships. If you don't form intimate relationships, you will never, ever experience what it means to be loved and accepted for who you are as a human being, not as a performing
Man.
man.
Oh my goodness. Is there a world where men can just be accepted without performing? Is there
Yes.
a world where men can be accepted without building, without working, without providing, without protecting, without, going through different rites of passages that we go through to make us men?
I think that world exists. I am a optimist through and through. I never stop being optimistic. I think that world exists because I know men who exist in that world. So, for example, I can speak for the men in my life. I know the men in my life know very well that they do not need to perform for my approval. And they just need to exist as human beings. Just be yourself. Come through. If you're struggling, let's have a chat about it. If you are having a difficult time, let's have a chat about it. You do not need to perform. I love you as you are.
Yeah.
I'm easy.
But also, Jennifer, my goodness, you've really opened a Pandora's box, and I think this is extremely profound. I think I'm going to have you again here just for us to continue having this conversation, because these things you're saying are very profound. But I also think that there's a role that women play in upholding some of these things. Like, for
Yes.
example, I usually say, who usually makes fun of men in their badminton activities? It's if they are heterosexual men, who are the majority, it's women. Who makes fun of their different size and shapes of, their manhood, it's, the women. Who is likely to judge you based on whether you are rich or poor, it is the women. And so how do we help women to overcome this internalized patriarchy that then makes them to uphold the requirements of such a precarious man box? But these men are born by women. These men marry women. These men have sisters. These men are part of our communities. And when they're hurt, when they die, when they think bad things happen to them, the grief kills the people who were the custodians of this internalized patriarchy. So let me tell you as a man. So for example, it is my mother who is likely to mothers are the ones who are likely to ensure that you go through certain rites of passages. It's mothers who are likely to ensure that fathers push you to marry at a certain time, but it's the women who try to bring certain things. It is women who would call them, in my culture we call them way zero, like a man is the pillar. You're likely to hear that from women, not from men, because then if you're not the pillar, then who are you? You know. How can we help women to also understand that there's internalized patriarchy and it continues to perpetuate this precarious man box, precarious manhood, and eventually leads to all these problems, and then it shows in many of these challenges that we're trying to address?
Yeah, no, I understand your question,
Yeah.
and maybe my pushback would be actually that I feel, in my experience, it has been men who perpetuate patriarchy, and then they're supported by a small number of, okay, not a small number, a good number of women. But the answer is feminism. I know that is not popular. I'm sorry, but the answer is feminism, because feminism argues for equality among the genders. Feminism is not the one where feminists are not screaming at men to become X, Y, and Z. Feminists are just saying, can we just see humanity? Can we just be equal as humans? So I think one of the answers could be feminism, just adopting a feminist approach to life, reading feminist theory, reading feminists and the things that they say. And I know people, when you say that, people usually argue, yeah, but feminists are the bad people, they're saying men are this. I'm like, no, those are not feminists. Those are people who are borrowing the term and ruining it. But real feminists exist. And real feminists talk about real issues that exist in society, not just for women. So I think the patriarchy is mainly upheld by men. And that's why it has gone on for so long. That's why the patriarchy has been so strong for such a long time. Because society was ordinarily created by men in the sense that they were in positions of power over a long period of time. Men were in positions of power. They're the ones who went to school. They're the ones who got the jobs. The ones who could buy the land. They're the ones who could do X, Y, and Z. And as a man, you are required, after you're done with, when you are grown up, start joining the population of men so that you can become the provider. But then now with time, women have started going to school. Sometime was it in the 80s or 70s when the pill came out? Women started going to school. Women started getting jobs. Women started making money. And now they're making even more money than some men. So now the man is no longer required to come to the relationship as a provider. And they don't know what they're supposed to do with their lives if they are not the provider, because they were conditioned and socialized to believe when you grow up, you become a provider. And men and women, some women who are upholding the patriarchy because of that internalized misogyny and internalized patriarchy, they believe the same concepts, because for them they have been brought up to believe the man is supposed to do this and this, and they're supposed to have this and this, and they're supposed to be this tall and earn this money and all these things. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into understanding that, first of all, we are all human and we are going through our own set of issues, and we need to accept those issues.
Yeah.
And after we have accepted those issues, then we can start, when we start treating each other as humans, equal humans, the argument of feminism. If we start treating each other as equal humans, then all these things will start to go down, because I will not need for you to perform. I will need you to just come through.
Jennifer, I just want to push back a little bit that the patriarchy is a very small number of men at the top who find a very small number of women to collaborate with to uphold it. Majority of us, who are many women and many men, we are being killed by this thing.
That is true.
Because one, we are not owners of capital.
That's true.
Two, we are not owners of violence.
True.
We don't own the monopoly of violence.
True.
But it is owned by a small number of men. Like,
Yes.
for example, if you look at the Kenyan cabinet, it's a group, it's a small clique of men with a few number of women. But even if you trace these women, it's women who have risen through the ranks of these collaborating men. They
Yes.
collaborate with men, and
Yes.
And so for me, I feel like the mistake we make sometimes is that the men who are supposed to be allies, the ordinary men dying in industries, the ordinary men whose bodies are being riddled by bullets, because there's a whole lot of criminalization of poverty in this country, and men are the ones who suffer. But then, because we have taken such very hard stance that okay, your problems as men, you will solve them as men, because you're not organized, you're not reaching out, you're not vulnerable, you're not together, you will fix them. Us as women, we are fixing ours through chamas, blah 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 blah. And I like that we are having this conversation. But I agree with you on this part that what we need to do is to build more bridges. We need to talk to each other more.
Yes,
we
I
need to
agree.
form collaborative spaces anymore. When men are hurting, women will automatically hurt.
Yes, yes.
When women are hurting, men will automatically hurt.
Yes.
And this idea that one can thrive and not the other
That is a lie.
is absolutely obnoxious.
Yeah.
One part of your body is paining, you will feel the pain. Even if it's this small little finger, your
I
body
agree.
will shut down.
I agree with you.
But we don't see society as a whole organism. We see it as, and this is the work of capitalism. It knows how to divide us
Yes.
based on our color, based on our sex, based on our gender, based
Yes.
on our region, based on our language and our accent and how we look.
Agreed.
And so we are divided into these small spaces, but we'll never unite.
I
Yeah.
highly encourage people. That's why, again, power of community.
Yeah.
You see, the power of community, the people in cabinet cannot come and take it away from. Oh, maybe they can, but resistance. Community is an act of resistance, in my opinion. That's why we need to form it, and we need to fight for it, no matter how bad things get. Don't forget the people that you are with, the common mwananchi you're with, because that is the person who will come to your funeral.
Yeah.
That is the person who will come to your house when you're sick. That is the person who will pull together chama and harambe when something happens to you.
Yeah.
Not the politician you think that you have access to because you don't.
I think so.
Politicians will always, politicians and people in power will always band together. And they're a small minority. And they know that they are. And that's why I think community is an act of resistance. And I think looking at, it's that thing Simon Sinek said, looking at the person on your right and the person on your left and taking care of those two people. Because those are the people that will be there when things go south.
Yeah.
So that is how I would approach bringing people together instead of this siloing and these wars
Yeah.
and these wrangles
Yeah.
and these gender wars,
Yeah.
which I find very ridiculous. And I am just like, please read a book.
Yeah.
Please read a book. Just because somebody has a microphone on TikTok does not make them an expert on gender.
Exactly.
Please read a book.
Yeah.
Read researchers, read sociologists,
Yeah.
read social science, read the people who actually do this for a living. They all say the same thing. The person on your left and the person on your right, the sister on your phone, the brother that you're supposed to call, the parent, the neighbor. Just because it's the cow that died does not mean that you don't go visit. Go. And I know it feels, community requires work.
It requires a lot of work.
It requires a lot of
Yeah.
kujituma.
Yeah.
And beyond kujituma, it requires a lot of inconvenience.
True.
So don't let that die just because it is inconvenient. Right now, there's a lot of tools that are being created to create convenience. You can exist in your house without ever stepping out because you can order everything online.
Yeah.
But that is a tactic to break community.
Exactly.
And that's why community is an act of resistance.
When you break community, you become a better person who can be a consumer, because then you will need pills to numb your pain. You will need, a gym to work on your weight. Well, you need a gym yet, but sometimes it's just a community of people who are walking at Karura that might help you with your weight issues, and maybe sometimes loneliness has a lot of
it's a
many
pandemic.
other problems.
It's a
but
pandemic
just
now.
belonging to community is what does it.
Yeah.
Give me your final comments. Speak to a certain man, and I want to suggest that you tell them the benefit of therapy, because I did therapy, started therapy 6 years ago. My life has completely changed.
Yeah.
I cannot explain where I would be without therapy.
I'm so happy to hear that. That makes me happy because it means that my work matters. I'm not your therapist, but I know that a therapist out there
Your work matters.
did the work, and the work
Oh
matters.
my goodness, yeah.
Right?
And CBT and talk therapy and art and writing and journaling, all those things. They saved me from the brink of distraction, and here I am.
Yeah. So I'm very happy to hear that. What I would say, speaking to a specific man out there who is going through whatever they are going through, and again, therapy does not mean that you come with problems. Sometimes you can come with happiness. We are happy to have happy sessions. So what I would say is, don't suffer in silence. I know, as I said before, the automatic instinct to get when we're in pain is to like shut down. But I want you to lean on the power of community. There's this analogy where when animals are in a pack, they're able to fight off a predator easier than when it is one animal that is trying to fight off the predator. So I highly encourage you to find your pack, because there's a pack out there. Stop trying to do everything alone. And I know that may not be helpful to just say stop, but I encourage you to work out of your shell and figure out how you can connect with other people, because we heal in community and we need people. Don't let society or the people around you make you believe that your pain is insignificant. And beyond that, I highly encourage you to look within, do a lot of introspection, think about the things that you're going through and bring them to the forefront, speak to other men, reach out to other men, support other people who are around you, and don't carry that burden alone, because many people want to help you. And as for therapy, please book a session with someone and talk to them. There's a lot of benefit that is out there that you could gain and realize that you've been suffering all along for no good reason. So yeah, reach out.
How do they reach you?
Go online, search Jennifer Kyalo or search Safe Space Arena. You're going to see a booking link that has all the information. You can book your session online. It is virtual. So at the convenience of wherever you are, you can do that. And yeah, we'll get to talk. My phone number is always on the internet, 07800 59 269. Call me, let's have a chat, and let's see where we go from there. I may not be your therapist, and I may not be the person that you get to work with, but I have a community of therapists that I can recommend to you. So it doesn't have to be me. Again, vibes. If I'm not your vibe, I will find you somebody who is your vibe. And yeah, there's a lot of help. Please reach out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I've talked to many psychologists. Many of them lack the depth that you have, and I'm not actually comparing to lift you up. I'm just being honest, because I think many of them don't read widely to understand all these things. So we're very, and it's not just a psychologist problem; it's a problem that we have in Kenya. Professions, people look at profession as only one thing. I'm only a teacher, but you can be a teacher, you can be a psychologist, you can be a counselor, you can be somebody who supports, and just by understanding a wide. And so I like that a lot. I've hosted psychologists sometimes here. It's very difficult to have the depth of conversation we have, and therefore I thank you for the work you've done. I thank you for the knowledge you've amassed. I thank you for what you're doing, and I'm looking forward for us to work together. That was Manspeqtive Africa. We're hosting Jennifer Kyalo, who's a counseling psychologist, who's a clinical psychologist. It's a difference by the way between a clinical psychologist and a counseling psychologist. We'll get into that next time. The hashtag is Manspeqtive Africa. Let us know what you think about this conversation. And of course, there's an SMS line. If you're watching us on KTN, there's an SMS line that is running here. Let us know what you think. My name is Dannish Odongo across all social media platforms. And of course, we love to hear from you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, it is Manspeqtive Africa, and let us know who we need to host next, or whether you want to be hosted. Comment and let us know. Until next time, adios, and may God bless you.